Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are tackling one of the most brutal and psychologically draining challenges in modern life. We're talking about navigating co-parenting and trying to heal after leaving a toxic relationship, specifically one involving narcissistic abuse. This isn't just about, moving on emotionally. It's about building a fortified reality for yourself and for your children in a world that's been made systematically chaotic.
The stakes here just couldn't be higher. And not just for the adult who is trying to rebuild their life, but really for the long-term stability of their children. We've pulled from what is essentially a comprehensive recovery playbook, a collection of materials that goes beyond just, empathy. It gives you actionable strategies, specific legal survival tools, and psychological blueprints. All of it is designed to help you reclaim control and establish stability where chaos used to reign.
So our goal is simple. We want to quickly extract that core psychological blueprint and the concrete defense tactics, the legal and emotional playbook that our sources promise, so you feel equipped, not overwhelmed, because you really need to define the opponent before you can define the strategy.
Okay, so we hear the term narcissism all the time. It comes from that Greek myth of Narcissus, the guy who fell in love with his reflection. But psychologically, where does, healthy self-regard cross the line into something pathological?
It crosses the line when we move into a clinical diagnosis, specifically narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD. And this isn't just about vanity. It's a pervasive pattern, and it's built on three non-negotiable pillars. First, a deep fundamental sense of grandiosity. Second, a constant, really exhausting need for admiration. And third, critically, a profound lack of empathy. Their relationships are superficial because they only see people as instruments to fulfill those needs. Right. And here's where it gets really interesting, because the source material points out that not all narcissists look like the caricature we see in movies. We automatically picture the grandiose, the overt type, the loud, dominant, aggressively arrogant person who's always seeking prestige and just attacks anyone who dares to criticize them.
Yes, but the crucial distinction, and the one that often confuses people when they're in it, is the vulnerable or covert narcissist. This individual is often introverted, maybe even shy. They're highly sensitive to perceived slights, and they're prone to withdrawing or sulking. What they're doing is hiding this massive insecurity and this underlying entitlement behind anxiety. They might avoid situations where they can be judged, but they still have these secret fantasies of being, unparalleled and great.
And then you've got the worst case scenario, the malignant or toxic type, which basically adds deeply antisocial behavior, zero remorse, and often aggression to that grandiosity. That's the most destructive dynamic to escape from.
And what unites all of them, whether they're overt or covert, is the foundation. Their sense of self-worth is inherently unstable. It is completely dependent on external praise and validation, which is often called narcissistic supply.
Ah, the supply.
Exactly. So if that supply is threatened, if you offer even just constructive criticism or just disagree with them, they perceive it as an existential attack. And that immediately triggers defensive behaviors like projection, where they dump their own flaws onto you, or devaluation, where they decide you're the problem.
The emotional wreckage for the partner is it's severe. The sources detail chronic stress, anxiety, and something worse. It's the systematic erosion of self-esteem that often looks a lot like PTSD. But looking through all this, there's one specific tactic that causes the most insidious psychological harm, and that's gaslighting.
Gaslighting is, it is systematic psychological manipulation. It's designed to make the victim lose faith in their own sanity.
To their own judgment.
Exactly. By constantly questioning their reality. You hear phrases like, "You're making that up," or "That never happened," or the classic, "You're just too emotional." It works to lock the partner into this cyclical trap of narcissistic abuse.
And that cycle is what makes leaving feel completely impossible.
Yes, it starts with this dizzying high of idealization. They make you feel like you are the most special person on earth. But then it plunges into the deep pain of devaluation, then rejection and isolation, only for the narcissist to pull you back in with these false promises of change, just restarting the whole loop. It fosters this profound emotional dependency.
So if the adult partner is navigating that level of turmoil, what stands out as the highest stake? It has to be the children.
The children become the ultimate battleground. They rarely receive unconditional acceptance. Their worth is often tied entirely to meeting the narcissistic parent's expectations. So they learn these dysfunctional relationship models that rely on control, on manipulation, even competition with the other parent. And the major risk that's detailed in the source material is parental alienation.
Can you elaborate on that a bit? What does that actually look like?
It's when the narcissistic parent attempts to deliberately and systematically turn the child against the other, non-narcissistic parent. They use the children as pawns, pulling them into these loyalty conflicts that cause immense guilt, confusion, and real psychological damage. And the source material is very clear on this. The only counter-manipulation tool the healthy parent has is offering absolute consistency and unconditional love.
So just being the rock.
Exactly. That stability becomes the child's secure base. It shields them from the chaos and gives them a healthy blueprint for relationships built on trust, not on control.
Okay, so we've defined the dynamic and the, frankly, terrifying cost. The critical question is, how do you stop it? When cooperation and mutual respect are off the table, the old rules for co-parenting obviously won't work.
That's absolutely right. Trying to co-parent with a narcissist is like
Right.
trying to build a sandcastle in the tide. It'll get washed away. The recommendation in the playbook is to just scrap the idea of cooperation and move immediately to parallel parenting.
Right.
It's a structure designed specifically to minimize direct contact and emotional entanglement. The focus shifts entirely to predictability and formal written procedures. You're creating two completely separate spheres of influence.
And within that, the most effective defense strategy for maintaining that emotional distance is the gray rock method. I mean, that sounds phenomenal conceptually, just making yourself emotionally uninteresting.
It's the most vital tool for self-preservation. The gray rock method is about making yourself as emotionally bland and boring as possible. You're starving the narcissist of the supply they crave. So if they try to provoke you or insult you or generate drama, they get absolutely nothing back.
But I have to ask, in the heat of a conflict, when you're being baited or attacked, how realistic is it to maintain that strict neutrality? What's a practical tactic that keeps you gray when your emotions are, boiling?
It takes practice. It's almost like memorizing a mental script. The playbook suggests you adopt the persona of a transaction-focused customer service representative. Your responses have to be factual, concise, neutral, and emotion-free. You have to avoid justifying, defending, or arguing about the past. So, for example, if they text you, "You were always a terrible partner and now you're late," your response is only, "Child exchange will occur at 5:05 p.m. as scheduled."
Nothing else?
Nothing else. That deliberate refusal to engage the insult is what starves the conflict of oxygen.
That brings us to communication rules. In this parallel structure, everything has to be documented.
It must always be in writing. Email, or preferably one of the dedicated co-parenting apps. The communication must be factual, brief, impersonal, and focus strictly on logistical details about the child. If they try to introduce drama or history, you simply do not respond to that part of the message. The playbook also addresses triangulation. That's when they try to involve third parties, like using the child as a spy or messenger. The rule is simple. Insist all communication and exchanges are parent-to-parent only. Do not engage with a third party they send your way.
So the legal system, which is often intimidating, it can actually serve as a crucial boundary here. The source material really emphasizes that for these high conflict cases, the parenting plan has to be exceptionally detailed. Why is that specificity the key?
Because ambiguity is the narcissist's greatest weapon. It creates loopholes they will absolutely exploit to maintain control and chaos. If a plan uses vague language like visits as agreed, that's an open invitation to constant conflict. The parenting plan needs precise schedules down to the minute, clear rules for holiday splits, specific drop-off locations, and mandatory clauses for dispute resolution, like required mediation before you can go back to court. The less there is to interpret, the less there is to fight over.
And speaking of evidence, the playbook is relentless about this. Documentation is your shield.
Absolutely. The contact log is the non-narcissistic parent's most valuable tool. You have to systematically record the date, time, and content of every single interaction, every manipulation attempt, every boundary violation. This is what establishes a documented, verifiable pattern of high conflict behavior that you can show to the courts.
And the recommendation for digital tools seems, almost mandatory now.
Oh, they're critical. Dedicated co-parenting apps like our Family Wizard or Talking Parents, they archive all communication, they track expenses, and they often generate court-admissible reports. These apps function as a neutral third-party witness, making it nearly impossible for the narcissistic co-parent to use gaslighting or deny past statements. And if you're in a very high-stakes situation, the sources advocate for using legal safeguards, like an attorney who specializes in high-conflict cases and potentially even court-appointed supervisors to monitor exchanges and ensure compliance. So the final takeaway on protection seems to be a return to that core concept of consistency, never allowing those boundaries to shift because of pressure or, emotional blackmail. That consistency is the shield. The playbook is adamant about this. The moment you allow a boundary to be tested or shifted, you've handed control right back to the narcissist. Consistency signals safety and predictability to your child, and it signals failure to the abuser. Your boundaries have to be non-negotiable. Hashtag howjob.
So this deep dive really shows that the journey toward healing and effective parallel parenting requires this deep personal resilience, but it has to be backed by a set of highly specific tactics. The blueprint is clear. You have to recognize the specific psychological patterns, whether it's overt or covert, prioritize parallel parenting and the gray rock method to starve the conflict, and then relentlessly document everything using robust digital and legal tools.
Healing and rebuilding your identity after narcissistic abuse it's an incredible act of courage. It requires accepting the reality of the dynamic, reclaiming your passions, and setting those non-negotiable boundaries. And remember the central message from all this material: you are not alone, and you are not crazy for having experienced this.
The source material notes that a narcissist operates with an inner void and this perpetual need for external validation, identifying only with an idealized image of themselves. We focus today on recovery at the personal, the family level. But if this fundamental internal void is what drives the narcissistic need for external validation and control, what does it mean for society when people in positions of enormous power, in politics, in business, in institutions, are operating from that same fundamental need for constant admiration and control? What are the long-term consequences when external validation, rather than, say, ethical conviction, is driving major societal decisions? That's a thought worth exploring on your own.